Hi, my name is Shannon Crooker, and I'm here to discuss the research published in 2003 that focused on gender diversity in management and firm performance. The research was conducted by Sean Dwyer, Orlando C. Richard, and Ken Chadwick in the Journal of Business Research. The researchers specifically looked at how a firm's growth orientation and organizational culture facilitates diversity. At the time that this research was conducted, the researchers indicated that little research existed that focused on gender diversity, even though gender diversity had increased as more women were accepting managerial positions. What research that did exist focused on top management teams, even though research suggested that middle managers played a key role in directing and implementing the strategies set by the top management teams. Not only that, research at the time focused on non-visible attributes such as tenure, education, and functional background, which excludes the fact that different types of diversity has divergent effects on an organization, especially how non-visible versus visible attributes may play a role. Lastly, research up to this point had been mixed on whether there was a positive or negative relationship between diversity and firm performance, which we are going to take a closer look at in a minute. Together, these issues, or data gaps, may suggest that the diversity performance link is dependent on organizational context. Therefore, it would behoove the researchers to look at a broader set of interrelated strategic and organizational variables, such as growth orientation and organizational culture, to determine in what context does gender diversity in management impact firm performance. While upper echelon theory suggests that senior level managers have critical impact on a firm's performance, which is essentially because they are the ones that make the organizational decisions, there's conflicting research results between group diversity and firm performance. Some indicate there is a negative correlation because diverse top management teams are more difficult to manage as well as more costly. However, some studies report a positive relationship between gender diversity and firm performance because it can provide a larger number of perspectives, cognitive resources, and increases the problem-solving capacity of the team. Since most studies have only examined senior-level executives, the ones who set the strategy, the research felt this created a significant data gap on gender diversity's role in firm performance. One of the goals of this study was to see whether diversity's influence on firm performance is more fully realized when the management group's level is broadened to include middle managers. After all, the strategy process involves multiple levels of management. Middle managers are responsible for directing and coordinating the strategy between departments, and lower levels supervisors will implement and oversee the employees who are actually implementing the strategy. It can be argued that middle management's key role is to implement top management strategy, so we cannot ignore their role in performance. The researchers felt it was important to take a look at the factors that may interact with diversity, so they took a contingency approach as part of their study. Firm performance, when it comes to diversity, will most likely depend on whether the firm's business strategies are compatible with their organizational culture. Growing firms benefit from diversity, but it can be detrimental to downsizing firms. A growing firm must have sufficient human capital to spread risk over a broader employee base. Diversity benefits an expanding organization because it offers a wider set of skills, experience, and knowledge. Firms growing because of mergers and acquisitions may also be better suited to manage change, especially if they have effectively accepted diversity into their culture. Diversity can offer market-related advantages because of the variety of experience and knowledge offered by a diverse group. On the other hand, a downsizing firm may not benefit from diversity because the company is generally looking to cut costs. There's an additional cost associated with the coordination and control of a more heterogeneous team that could be detrimental to a cash-strapped downsizing firm. So the researchers' first hypothesis is to examine whether gender-diverse firms pursuing high growth will have higher performance compared to gender-diverse firms pursuing low growth. Next, the researchers looked at organizational culture. They used Kim Cameron and Robert Quinn's popular Competing Values Framework, which is used to help conceptualize the dominant culture types over 2 dimensions. They specifically look at how formal or informal the organizational processes may be, and then they also explore whether the firm is internally focused or externally focused, which means they are more concerned with competition. The four primary cultures are clan, adhocracy, hierarchy, and market. Clan, which is internally focused with an informal governance system, is collaborative in nature. Firms falling under the clan culture umbrella are generally considered friendly places to work. An adhocracy culture is creative, adopting informal processes, but they have an external orientation. They focus on risk taking and they also encourage spontaneity. Then we have hierarchy, which is internally focused with a rigid governance system in place, but security and stability are key characteristics in a hierarchy culture. The market culture is competitive, also has a pretty formal government structure, but they're very results oriented and focused on external competition. The researchers chose to focus on the clan culture and adhocracy culture because they felt that a more flexible, informal governance structure would be more conducive to diversity. And they offered these two hypotheses that they would both have higher performance if they had gender diverse firms. The main difference between these two is that a clan culture is employee focused, more internally focused, while the adhocracy is externally very driven by the market, competition, and any interaction with the environment. In addition to examining a contingency approach, which looks at the context of the organization, the researchers wanted to add a higher order multivariate approach to their research by taking a more holistic approach, somewhat of a systems thinking approach if you're familiar with that. Because it can be argued that parts of a social entity take their meaning from the whole and cannot truly be understood in isolation, which is in line, like I said, with a systems thinking approach. In this instance, it is the interaction of the parts, gender diversity, growth orientation, and organizational culture that will impact a firm's performance. They posit that firms pursuing growth will do so more effectively in a flexible culture and a focus on the external environment, such as adhocracy, which leads to our fourth and final hypothesis stated here. The research consisted of surveying 535 banks on culture and performance. They specifically surveyed presidents and senior level HR managers. And then 6 months later, a second survey concerned with workforce demography was sent out. Banks are required to report demographic information on an annual basis by the federal government, so they use this information to focus on the diversity aspect. Gender and race of employees is reported across 9 hierarchical job categories, but the researchers focused only on officials and managers, which are across the organization. It includes administrative and managerial personnel who set broad policies, exercise overall responsibility for the execution of these policies, and direct individual departments with special emphasis on a firm's operations. For growth orientation, the researchers reviewed the bank's financial statements, taking an average over a 3-year time period. They specifically looked at employee productivity and return on equity. A total of 177 usable questionnaires were received, resulting in a 33% response rate. The relationship between gender diversity and growth was significant for productivity, but not for return on equity. This was true for firms with high levels of gender diversity in general and with growth, as well as the clan culture. So hypotheses 1 and 2 were partially supported from a productivity angle. However, there was a negative correlation between gender and firm performance and adhocracy cultures, especially when it came to return on equity. Therefore, hypothesis 3 was not supported. But then when we take the next step and take a look at adhocracy from a multivariate or configurational theory approach, which took into account their growth orientation, within an adhocracy culture, we do find a significant correlation between productivity and gender diversity. Therefore, a gender diverse management group appears to provide benefits to a growth growth-oriented firm and a culture that values innovation, flexibility, and interaction with the environment. Return on the equity did not show a significant correlation in this final calculation. So what does this all mean? What are the implications from this study? Well, it's apparent that a multitude of organizational variables interact with diversity, so you cannot just look at one. Using a contingency approach suggests that the potentially beneficial aspects of gender diversity appear to require a more nurturing, employee-focused setting before they can be fully realized, so more of a clan culture. The demographics of a manager group may be more complex than previously expected. Firms planning to increase their current level of gender diversity may be advised to cultivate a set of organizational values that focus closely on employee affiliation and consensus building, maybe paternal leadership styles and strategic emphasis that are internally oriented and informal. So everything that defines a clan culture type. And the study supports that previous research indicates that gender diversity can add experience, creativity, and new perspectives that allow a firm to break into new markets. Taking a configurational approach that analyzed growth orientation as well resulted in a positive effect that the bivariate contingency prediction did not. This underscores the potential importance of taking a configurational approach to studying diversity's effects within the firm. The results suggest that gender diversity's impact in management is conditional upon its fit within the overall organizational context. So my questions to you are, with taking into consideration what ROE is, a measurement of the amount of net income a company realizes relative to shareholders' investments, why, as a firm performance indicator, why do you think ROE did not return a significant relationship with gender diversity in this study's research? Number 2, what other organizational variables might be more helpful in recognizing gender diversity's influence on a firm's performance? And then number 3, what are some steps a more externally focused or formally governed firm can take to include and increase diversity in their organizations? Thank you for your time. Have a good week.